Alright, so I'm going to do a quick rundown on the reproductive systems in pigs and humans, since we ran short of time this year. So here I have a picture of a male reproductive system in a pig, and you can see the different structures here. Let me blow this up even larger. Okay, so when we look at this, what you're looking for is right here. I've totally dissected out the penis. If we go down over here, you can see the actual testy. And then right here, the squiggly tubes off the testy is called the epididymis, and that's where the sperm's going to sit and mature. And then once the male pig goes to impregnate a female, it's going to travel, the sperm is going to travel in a fluid called semen up through the vas deferens, and then it's going to hook up and meet with the penis. So some other structures you can see in this picture is the bladder here, and right in through here, you can't see it very well, but right in this area right here is a hole called the inguinal canal, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So let's talk about some of the functions of these structures that I had just pointed out. And the first one here we'll talk about then is the penis. And again, the job or role of the penis is to deposit sperm safely inside the female. We also talked about the testes, which this is where the sperm is made. And is really important because if the testes are originally formed in the abdominal cavity, and then they drop through that inguinal canal, because if the testes are kept at body temperature, it actually is not healthy for sperm to be made at that temperature. So the testes can actually regulate the distance that, or should I say the scrotal sac can regulate the distance that the testes are from the body. So when the testes get too hot, they can relax, and when they get too cold, they can contract and pull the testicles up closer to the body to keep the sperm at the correct temperature. So when we're talking about the sperm here is simply made up of a headpiece, which has some enzymes at the head of the sperm, which will allow it to break through the membrane or penetrate the membrane around the egg. The only thing that really goes into the egg is the nucleus, which contains the male's DNA. We also have several mitochondria here, which is needed to provide ATP for the tail or the flagella to whip around and to propel the sperm so that it will hopefully find an egg, and fertilize it. Like I had mentioned earlier, the vas deferens job is to carry that mature sperm through 3 different glands. We didn't really get into that amount of detail, but you are or should be familiar with at least one of those glands, and that being the prostate gland. Those glands will then provide some nourishment in the form of sugar, and it will also give us a basic solution because the female vagina is very acidic. So it would essentially die if it didn't have that base to counteract the low pH of the female reproductive tract. So in this picture here, we can see a blown up picture of here's the bladder. You can also see the umbilical arteries and the umbilical vein. And then here's the vas deferens right here. So that vas deferens, and here's that inguinal canal I was talking about. So that little ribbon at the base of the bladder is the vas deferens. Now the spermatocord is what we refer to that contains the vas deferens. And if you notice, there was an artery that went along with it down that inguinal canal to supply the cells in the scrotal sac with nutrients and oxygen. Now what can happen is if that inguinal canal doesn't close up enough, all right, and I'll show you in the next slide. I thought I had it there. So if the inguinal canal does not close up enough, so here's that inguinal canal right here, what might happen is that intestine might pop through. And that is called a hernia, an abdominal hernia. So you may have heard of that. That is what causes that. Females can get hernias, but it's very rare. We usually see that only in males. All right, so that's pretty much all you guys need to know for, and I shouldn't say you guys, I should say all of you students need to know about guys. So let's move on now to the female reproductive tract. So let's push that on up. And here's the human female reproductive system. And we can see that we have a uterus, which is smooth muscle, and this is basically where a developing fetus will be nourished and housed. And then we also have the ovaries. Now, the ovaries are where the eggs are sitting. Now, the human female is born with all of her eggs, and then we do not make any more, so it's very important that we protect our eggs. So when we talk about the human uterus, usually we can carry like 1 to 2 babies versus a pig, and we saw that in that adult pig's uterus this last week, that they can carry up to 12 piglets. Right, so, and then also in this picture you can note the fallopian tubes, which is the pathway for the egg to travel from where it was fully developed. It will need to be fertilized in the fallopian tube for it to stick to the uterine wall in order to fully develop. We also saw with the female pig the cervix. That cervix here is that muscular the muscular muscle, the very strong muscle that helps hold that developing baby inside the uterus. Okay. Right, so this slide did not convert over as nicely, but we said that humans have 2 ovaries where eggs will mature and be released 1 at a time each month. I already mentioned that it traveled down the fallopian tubes. The fallopian tubes are also called the oviducts. And I talked about how it had to be fertilized in the fallopian tubes. And we talked about the muscular ring called the cervix. And now here is a picture of half, well, a little more than half of the female pig's reproductive system. So let me move that up. Okay. So here is the here's the ovary right here. And here's our tiny little fallopian tube. And then we have these are the horns, the uterine horns. Okay, and then the body of the uterus is here. And then this is where it ended on our dissected adult. We saw right there at the cervix. And then you would have the vagina, which was the one tube, which was running parallel. They were running one on top of the other one. So you had one that was more, I don't know if you would call it ventral or probably ventral, and one that was more dorsal, I guess. They were laying on top of each other. So you had the urethra and you have the vagina that then hooked up to form the urogenital opening. All right, so let me move this down so you can see a diagram here. Blow it up a little. So here's a picture of our little tiny baby pig's reproductive system. So we can see right here, there's the ovary. We can see the uterine horn. Can't really see the body of the uterus. That would be down in through here. And I mean, I guess if you use your imagination, you can kind of picture that the fallopian tubes would be really small and sitting on top of that. You can kind of see how something's sitting on top of that ovary. All right, then you can also see the umbilical artery there, and then the bladder, which sat between it. I also have another picture in here, and we can see the kidney. And if you look here, you can see this tube right here that I'm trying to identify. That is the ureter. So for those of you that didn't see that in your dissected pig, you can see the rectum, the big tube coming down here. Here's our bladder again. And then we can see the kidney. This material up here is probably part of the adrenal gland. And this stuff over here, and it's hard to get a proper perspective on this, This could be, this granular stuff that I'm looking at, that could be pancreas. That is kind of what the pancreas does look like. It looks like this granular stuff sitting there. But I can't quite tell from just this small little image that I have of the pig. Hopefully this little PowerPoint, I don't even say it's a PowerPoint, this little presentation helps you with your studying for your pig practical. Do remember that Tuesday is the last day to come in after school to look at your pig, and Wednesday would be the last time during class. We will be closing the classroom right at 2:35 to set up for this exam on Thursday. Good luck studying, and I will see you later.